cops get the court's go-ahead to shoot your dogs. What would happen if you did the same thing? Thank you for joining me on the 27th episode of the LAVA Spurt, the Cops Help All Dogs Go to Heaven edition.
Welcome to the LAVA Spurt, the weekly offshoot of the lava flow. Channeling the flow of information to the libertarian, anarcho-capitalist, voluntarist, and agorist community. Brought to you by my per-episode donors. Thank you. Here's your host, Roger Paxton.
My family is a family of animal lovers, especially dogs. Our dogs are a very large part of our family. Hell, we even get them Christmas presents every year. Some days I think that my boys love our dogs more than they love us. But Scout and Dagny, our dogs, love us all unconditionally. They are the very first to greet me when I come home from work every day. They are family. So you can imagine what it would feel like if something were to happen to them. As we all know, there have been many recent cases of police officers shooting animals for seemingly no reason, from shooting dogs just for barking, or even shooting dogs that are standing tens of feet away and no threat whatsoever. It seems that cops have a shoot-first mentality when it comes to dogs. Well, now the 6th Circuit Court has ruled that police officers can shoot your dogs with impunity for infractions as minor as barking. I shit you not. Mark and Cheryl Brown petitioned the court to hold the city and police officers from Battle Creek, Michigan accountable for shooting and killing their dogs while executing a search warrant of their home looking for evidence of drugs. Again, it's always the drug war. The plaintiffs said the police officers' actions amounted to the unlawful seizure of property in violation of the Fourth Amendment. The circuit court agreed with a lower court ruling that sided with the police officers. Judge Eric Clay wrote in the court's opinion, quote, "The standard we set out today is that a police officer's use of deadly force against a dog while executing a warrant to search a home for illegal drug activity is reasonable under the Fourth Amendment when, given the totality of the circumstances and viewed from the perspective of an objectively reasonable officer, the dog poses an imminent threat to the officer's safety." And I'd be okay with that if that were the case in this situation. But it's not. There was no imminent threat, which we'll get into in a second. In the case of the Browns' 2 pit bulls, the imminent threat came from the dogs barking and moving around. One officer shot the first pit bull after he said it, quote, had only moved a few inches in a movement that he considered to be a, quote, lunge. A lunge is quite a bit more than a few inches. The injured dog retreated to the basement, where the officer shot and killed it, as well as the second dog, while conducting a sweep of the residence. Officer Klein testified that after he shot and killed the first dog, he noticed the second dog standing about halfway across the basement, the court's opinion explained. Quote, "The second dog was not moving towards the officers when they discovered her in the basement, but rather she was, quote, just standing there, barking, and was turned sideways to the officer. Klein then fired the first 2 rounds at the second dog. After the wounded dog ran into a back corner of the basement, another officer shot the dog rather than seeking help for it. Quote, Officer Case saw that there was blood coming out of numerous holes of the dog, and Officer Case didn't want to see it suffer, so he put her out of her misery and fired the last shot, Clay wrote. The court decided that the plaintiffs failed to provide evidence showing the first dog did not lunge at police officers, and that the second dog didn't bark. Yes, they didn't prove that the second dog didn't bark. Clay wrote that Mark Brown's testimony that he didn't hear any barking when the officers approached the residence did not have any impact on whether the dogs were a threat to the officers after they entered the house. The 6th Circuit Court covers the states of Kentucky, Michigan, Ohio, and Tennessee. Notice that the second dog was shot not because he was moving in a threatening manner, not because he was lunging at an officer, not because he was growling or snarling or anything like that, but because he was standing a decent distance away, halfway across the basement, not moving towards the officers, turned sideways to the officers, and barking. This, according to the court, is justifiable. What the actual fuck? This is just disturbing. My dog, Scout, barks at his own shadow, for fuck's sake. He also loves to bark at people walking on the sidewalk in front of our house or at cars passing by. He doesn't do this because he wants to go eat them or attack them. He does it to warn them to stay away. Nothing more. Scout has never been aggressive to anyone in his life. We've had Scout since my oldest child was 6 months old, and he's never even as much as snipped at anybody. Now, if someone comes to our door, Scout goes apeshit barking at the door, and will sometimes bark at new people when they come in the house for a few seconds, usually while backing away from them. So if that were a cop that came into our home, it would now be legitimate for that cop to shoot our small dog. This is utter bullshit. Our smaller dog, Dagny, named after Dagny Taggart and Atlas Shrugged, will usually only bark if Scout does. So when Scout goes apeshit at a cop and Dagny follows suit, now both of our furry family members are in danger of being killed, legally. Think about that for a minute. Dogs bark in order to communicate with us. This would be like saying it is legal for a cop to shoot someone for yelling at them, yet exhibiting no other evidence of a threat of violence. This is insane. I assume this ruling would also make it legal for postal workers to shoot barking dogs too. Thank Rothbard that postal workers don't generally deliver mail while packing heat. It makes you wonder if postal workers laugh at cops who are so terrified of dogs that they shoot them left and right, while postal workers deal with them on a regular basis without slaughtering them wholesale. If you think cops aren't above the law, consider this. What if you went to someone's house and shot their dog for standing several feet away from you while barking? What do you think would happen to you? You would likely be arrested and charged with a crime, or several crimes. You would be held responsible for your actions, as you should be. But cops in our society are literally above the law. I need to remind myself to thank my friends. I've had many friends over to my house, and Scout has barked at a lot of them. But not one of them has ever pulled out a gun and shot him, even though many of them carry guns regularly. Go figure. Until next time, keep striking the root.
Thank you for listening to The Lava Flow at thelavaflow.com. Don't miss an episode. Subscribe now at thelavaflow.com/subscribe. This has been a Pax Libertas Productions podcast.